Ibaka. But I will say this. First of all, Montrezl Harrell needs to stop lying to some degree, or people need to stop lying on him, because we've heard about the friction between him and Paul George and how that led to a lack of appreciation he felt he was receiving from the organization as a whole. Now, either that's the story or there's a whole bunch of people lying on him, because you see those reports all over the place. That's number one. But I look at Serge Ibaka, the acquisition of Serge Ibaka, and I'm certainly not going to say they're blowing it. Here's what I would say. They still need a point guard, and that's no knock against my brother Patrick Beverley. I got love for Patrick Beverley. I think that he's a stout defender. He's an energizer bunny. He's a professional pest, and I think every lineup needs that. But you also need a quintessential point guard to be an extension of the court on the floor and to really, really run that show for you. And Patrick Beverley is not viewed in that regard, not just by the coaches, but also by his teammate. Kawhi Leonard, from what I was told, wants a point guard and wants a prototypical point guard, essentially. It was supposed to be Rajon Rondo. Max, what happened is that Rajon Rondo thought that he was going to end up going to the Clippers. But the Atlanta Hawks, rather, came up with about almost $10 million more than the Clippers were willing to offer him or could offer him. So as a result of that, Bill Duffy, like any other agent that knows what the hell they're doing, particularly in this day and age, is always going to emphasize to you to take the money, because you could always be traded later. But get your money first. That's what they're going to do. And that's the reason why Rajon Rondo is in Atlanta as we speak, because he could always get traded to somebody. But the bottom line is that doesn't mean you'd get the money. Get the money first. That's why Rondo is not with the Clippers. If Rondo was with the Clippers, along with Serge Ibaka, I think free agency would have been a home run for the Clippers. But because that was not what happened, I'm not going to say they're blowing it, but that is something that they need to address.
Well, literally, that's exactly what I was going to say. I thought that we disagreed about this, but apparently we don't. I think they are blowing free agency, and it's not that they're not doing a good job. Serge Ibaka is a great pickup for them. Versatile defender who can stretch the floor to go next to Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. It's a perfect fit, especially when you still have Morris and you have depth and size and defense and shooting. But what they are missing is a floor general to make that offense more cohesive. It's not like station to station, half-court offense. Kawhi Leonard is a lot of things, and he's an above-average passer even at this point in his career for his position. But that's different than being like a point guard. You know, if you're going to run your offense through Kawhi Leonard, that's fine. You can do it. In fact, you can do it to great effect. But to beat the Lakers, you should have a dynamic playmaker who's not Kawhi Leonard, right? So had they, for example, made a move and somehow acquired Drew Holiday, I'd be thinking about the Clippers differently right now. Right now, I know Clippers are kind of the hot pick as the second best team in the West. But as you know, earlier in the show, I like the Mavericks better if they're healthy than the Clippers. I don't think the Clippers have done enough to address the issue, which is Patrick Beverley, who's a nice player, a 3-and-D guy who's short, so he's a point guard, is not a dynamic playmaker. So Rondo, I thought, was heading for the Clippers. Stephen A., you gave information as to why that didn't happen, and he would have been an excellent fit on the Clippers, especially since he's playoff Rondo. But Drew Holiday or someone like that, there were other options that you could have fit onto this team and gone like, wait a minute, the Clippers are a real threat. And I don't feel that way at this moment.
I agree with Stephen A. I can't call it a disaster because you are able to sign Serge Ibaka and you did re-sign the Morris twin. But at the same time, I think we're looking at it from a standpoint of that Lakers are really going out like they fell short last year because their counterpart down the hallway, the Lakers are really active and pursuing and getting who they want. I think it makes the Clippers kind of look like, man, are the Clippers dragging their feet? What's going on? I still think they got some time. Obviously, they have until the trade deadline, but I don't want to beat a dead horse. They need to address the point guard situation there. They need a floor general. It wasn't Rondo. I talked to CP before CP went to Phoenix, and CP, had interest in going back to the Clippers. They didn't want to pull that trigger, so the Clippers need to address the point guard play. And then there was, there is stuff floating around about the chemistry in that locker room last season. So whether Montrez was the blame of it, I'm sure you can't put all of it on it. they decided to part ways with him. But, I think number one issue is they need to address that point guard situation and then try to get on the same page. Because I think last year we were waiting for them to hit that chemistry mark last year because we just figured they'd been injured and hadn't got a chance to play together. But there was more behind the scenes that we didn't really know until now.
Well, Matt, it's interesting that you bring that up because a few weeks ago, I talked about the Clippers wanting CP3 or Rondo. Obviously, CP3 would have been the preference, and I also know he's got a great relationship with Ty Lue, and as a result, that had him strongly interested in returning to the Clippers because of the relationship with Ballmer as well, who he still has dinner with a lot of times. But here's the reality. This is what puts the real onus on Kawhi Leonard, in my estimation, and I really want to hear what you think about this, Matt. The Clippers gave up all those assets. It wasn't just to get Kawhi. It's because Kawhi insisted he wanted Paul George. It wasn't enough for him to come to the Clippers. He sat up there and said, if you don't do what it takes to get my man Paul George here with me, I'm going to go to the Lakers and join LeBron and AD. Ballmer couldn't let that happen. So they mortgaged the farm and to get him, which is that's their decision. It's not his fault per se. But because of that, they didn't have the assets necessary to now give Oklahoma City to get CP3. And so not only did you use those assets to acquire Paul George, it prohibited you from having the assets necessary to get CP3. And that's why I look at Kawhi Leonard and say, excuse me, if anybody is on the clock, if anybody is on it, like we should have our eye on him, it's him. Because you're the guy that can play, but are you that galvanizing leader? And on top of it all, are you willing to accept the fact, damn, I know I'm a two-time champion and a two-time NBA Finals MVP, but they did all of this just to get me, and I didn't even get us to the conference finals. What you gonna do about that? I think it's fair to ask Kawhi Leonard, what the hell are you going to do about that? When you talk about him, Max, being the best player in the world, which you was talking about before you came to your senses after he lost in the postseason, I say this to you, Max Kellerman, and I'll throw it to you, Matt, as well. We sit up there and we look at everybody else. Kawhi Leonard has never been in the eye of the storm as the man. Let's put him there and see what he's got. What's wrong with that?
Well, first of all, Kawhi put himself there when he opted not to go to the Lakers. Instead of joining a team where it would have been impossible for anyone to beat that team, and it really wouldn't have proven anything, AD, LeBron, and Kawhi, he decided to challenge LeBron head up. Now, it didn't work out. He didn't even get to the conference finals, but no one has to put him in the eye of the storm. He put himself and he trolled LeBron all season.
Hey, Matt.
Let me say this quickly, Matt. It's not an either-or. It's not an either-or, Stephen A. Like, he got Paul George there, and they didn't have the assets to go get CP3. CP3 and Kawhi is not enough to beat AD and LeBron. Four great players, two of them are taller, much taller than the other two, and a little better, right? CP3 with Kawhi and Paul George, now you're talking. So that's what I mean by they're blowing it, Matt. There's no CP3 on the team. He switched teams, but he didn't switch to the Clippers, right? Drew Holiday was on the move, didn't go to the Clippers. Even Rondo didn't go to the Clippers. They didn't get what they actually needed so far.
And I agree from a standpoint of, Kawhi hasn't shouldered enough blame. When you're the superstar on the team and they go out and get who you want, which is Paul George. And I haven't given up on that combination. First of all, they didn't play it together enough last year. But at the same time, I think after one season and a crazy season as it was, you can't give up on Paul George. We just had Paul George on All the Smoke last week. He's energized, out on a mission, so I'm excited to see what he does this year. But at the end of the day, the glaring weakness on this team is the point guard position, and they did not address it yet. Hopefully they still have some time, and you always know there can be a dark horse trade that no one's talking about or a move that no one's talking about that may happen, and they have up until free agency. But at this point, I don't think it's so much that the Clippers have failed. It's just that the Lakers are doing as if they lost last year in the second round. That's how they're treating free agency, with a sense of urgency.
Well, let me say this, Matt, before we close this segment. I totally agree with you. I think Kawhi Leonard needs to be in the eye of the storm. And the last person I want to hear from this on this subject is Max. And Max, here is why. You are living proof that Kawhi Leonard has not received enough blame. Because after they wet the bed and folded let go of a 3-1 lead against the Denver Nuggets in the conference semifinals, failing to get to the NBA Finals. All you said was, oops. If it were LeBron James, think about what we would have done to him had he come up short after having those expectations. He would have been crucified. But Kawhi Leonard is allowed to just fade into the twilight. They say, the Max Kellermans of the world say, oops, and he's about to go on his merry way, still having the New Balance commercials. Barely anybody's talking about him. And I'm saying, yo, it's time for him to be put in that eye of the storm the way LeBron and KD and others are, and then we can judge him.
That's ridiculous. He got lots of criticism, including by me, for choking in the second half of a Game 7, which is what he did. But had Paul George been giving him superstar support, which is what he's there for, it might have been different. If you watched that Clippers-Nuggets series and you came away from it thinking,
I can't talk to you when you lie.
Not Paul
I can't
George,
talk to you when you lie. I can't talk to you when you lie.
Never lie.
You're lying.
If the roles were reversed, if we're putting Kawhi as one of the top players, if not the top player in the world right now, the difference between his criticism and what LeBron would have still been getting up until next season starts, and even if he won a championship next year, they still would have talked about the season before. Stephen A. has a point. Kawhi definitely hasn't got the criticism that comes with being a superstar of your team, calling shots on your team, and not coming through. So that's why I'm looking for a bounce back season for Kawhi and PG.
Kawhi got criticized.
All right, we'll leave it on that note.